Hello, this is Carl Nichols, instructor for Leadership Management Series for ACC Continuing Education. I'm going to be lecturing briefly about our Fundamentals of Management class, Business Management 10112, class taking place January 24th through the 31st. I appreciate you being flexible to participate in this eCourse for the second session of the class. And what you'll see today is I'll be giving some brief lecture for particularly the areas of session 2 of the series that we won't be able to meet on the 31st for. And hopefully after you've gotten these highlights and these lecture recordings, you'll be able to answer the examination at the end to complete the class. There will be a handout I also want you to fill out and submit after the completion of listening to this lecture. As you're aware, for the first part of the class, we spent a good part of our time giving an overview of what the definition of management was. There are several definitions that were shared in the lecture, as well as the history and overview of management over the last 100 years, and a general definition of the processes of management. So make sure you kind of review these slides to make sure you understand those concepts for the test. During the lecture, we talked about the difference between what efficient management is and what effective management is. Efficiency is doing things correctly, which refers to the relationship between inputs and outputs and seeking to minimize resources or find the most efficient way to get things done. Effectiveness means doing the right things to reach a goal, but sometimes efficiency and effectiveness don't always mean synonymous with them working both together. You can sometimes be efficient but not be effective, but be effective and not efficient. It's important to remember the 4 management processes that are part of any good management. Planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And we'll spend a little bit more time on this in session 2 of the lecture later on during this time. Here is the basic levels of management as shown in this pyramid. Top managers being at the top, middle managers, frontline managers, and operatives. And as we had discussed with many organizations today, some of the middle manager and frontline manager positions sometimes are merged together or share some of the same responsibilities. As organizations become flatter or more of a team environment is utilized, we see that this sometimes is different in today's organizations. Here we got into the different types of managers and their role and classification in organizations. So pay attention to these different classifications because it will be important to remember these as you think about how they play themselves out in organizations. This is an important slide to remember. Generally, there's 4 major skills that a manager must have. Must have both conceptual skills, interpersonal skills, technical skills, and political skills to really do their job effectively and well. You have to have an ability to understand concepts, details, organizational interests and activities in order to be effective. In addition, you have to have excellent communication skills, ability to communicate with both individuals and groups and mentor people in your organization to be effective. And it's also important that you actually have technical skills so that you can actually supervise people in a functional area and understand how that expertise is important, whether that be HR, accounting, operations, whatever specific area that you're leading. General technical skills are important to be able to help move that group forward. And as I mentioned also during the lecture last week, whether you like it or not, there is a politics that comes to forefront in whatever management work you do. And so you might as well be a part of it in a constructive way to help move the organization forward. Here we got into a basic overview of kind of the history of contemporary management practices over the last 150 years. So it's important for you just to generally know who were the major theorists or philosophers at that time, kind of what those major themes were made up of, and make sure you understand who the contemporary new management gurus and leaders are in the 21st century. And we finished our first session of class talking specifically about how the new competitive landscape has four major factors that impact management. That's globalization, technological changes, the importance of knowledge and ideas, and the emergence of strategic alliances and collaborations across organizational boundaries are four major factors that all managers and management must be insightful of if it's going to be relevant and current during its times. So this officially starts kind of session 2 for the class, where we go into a little bit more detail about the management processes for any manager or organization, which is planning, organizing, leading, and controlling. And as you can see right here, these define kind of more specifically what those four areas of process need to be adhered to be an effective manager. In this particular slide, I want you to recognize that there's a different distribution of time based on where the level of manager is in the organization. You'll see here that in the first level manager or frontline manager, a portion of their time is spent leading, meaning that they're working directly with staff, making sure that they are staying on task, meeting performance goals, doing the job, doing the work. Spend some time organizing, little time planning, because probably a lot of that is coming from the top down, and then controlling is at 10%. Whereas when you go to the other side of the management level, at top management, you see that the top managers spend quite a bit of time organizing and planning. That's where the bulk of their time is spent, and leading probably mid-level managers and directors, and then some level of controlling. And then you see vice versa with middle managers. So you'll see in the next few slides kind of an emphasis on why managers should plan, because it helps set standards, it provides direction, it minimizes waste and redundancy, and proper planning reduces the impact that change can have on a staff or organization. The next couple slides give specific examples of the types of kind of planning that often happens by managers in organizations. Once you have the plan in place, a manager must know how to organize both human, physical, and financial capital and resources in order to get desired results and goals. The next few slides talk specifically about some of the functions of organizing as part of a second major pillar of the management process. The third area or process of management is leading, which is working with people primarily to perform necessary tasks by motivating them to achieve the organizational goals. And so in the next few slides, it talks about some of the important elements that have to be put into effect or thought through when leading a team. And then the last processes, which is controlling, there are specific tools that a manager can use to manage and monitor how effective the plan, the organizing of the resources is being carried out by the organization or by the assigned manager. So here you have some mechanisms that can be put in place to help really decide and determine how well the management strategy is happening within the organization. Mintzberg was a very important contributor to the manager roles in the management theory and doctrine. He believed that there were three major areas that managers played in terms of their roles and functions in organizations, and they fell under interpersonal, informational, and decisional. And each one of those qualities had subsections that talked about how you could see that major role or function being played out by a supervisor in an organization. I've included this handout in the attachments that you can use. There's a particular exercise that I want you to do in this handout that defines kind of what each role is, will be important in your ability to fill out and complete that assignment. So please pay particular attention to the Mintzberg managerial roles sheet, which will help you in the exercise that I will assign you. The next series of slides will introduce the concept of strategic management, which basically speaks to how managers and organizations think critically and think strategic about how they want to use the resources of the organization in an environment or landscape where things are constantly changing, both internally and externally, to come up with the best approach towards leading the organization towards change and positive growth and progression. So you'll see in the next coming slides kind of how the process works, how it's laid out, and what is required to get to real good strategic decision making by management and organizations. Here, the following slides get into some of the breakout of what goes behind decision making. As I mentioned last week, decision making is probably the single one most important quality that people are looking for in seasoned or new positions, to know that you are a good decision making and have some logic and some theory about how you make your decisions so that they can be supported, becomes a critical quality role here at the organization you work for. Here you want to pay particular attention to the foundations of decision making that fall in three major categories and how they're structured and how they're set up and some of the basic assumptions you can assume for it. So please look these over. These are important to remember as you think about how they're classified in general management theory and practice. Lastly, to conclude the lecture for session 2, there are 7 kind of leader diagnostic questions that every manager should use when making decision making to determine the level of that decision and the impact of that decision. And these are some of the questions that should be asked as you are trying to determine how that decision will have its ultimate resolve throughout the process. How significant is it? How important is the subordinate commitment? What level is the subordinate support for the team or organizational objectives? What is the member's level of knowledge or expertise relative to the problem? And how skilled or committed are the group members to working together? All these should be part of some of the factors that determine just exactly how important that decision is for the organization. Well, that concludes the end of the lecture for session 2 of Fundamentals of Management. I hope you've enjoyed the class, and please complete the assessment or test and the handouts and get those back to me based on the instructions I've given you in the email, and you should be able to pass this class with flying colors. Thank you for your time, and thank you for being a part of this class.